Notification came through on a Tuesday morning while I was elbow-deep in a trench under a commercial kitchen floor in downtown Columbus. My phone buzzed against the concrete. I ignored it. I was tracing a faulty conduit that had been tripping the circuit breaker for a restaurant that opened in 6 weeks, and the owner, a nervous man named Felix, who stress-ate his own menu items during inspections, was standing 3 feet away watching my every move. "Found it," I said. The insulation had been chewed through, rats probably, or the previous contractor cutting corners on the sleeve guard. Either way, it was a clean fix. 2 hours, maybe 3. Felix exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since February. I pulled off my gloves, checked my phone. It was a text from my mom. "Sweetheart, your father and I need to talk to you about the 4th of July. Can you call tonight?" I stared at it for a second. The 4th was 3 weeks away. My parents hosted every year. Backyard cookout, the same playlist my dad had been running since 2009. My aunt's potato salad that nobody touched but everybody complimented. It was the one family event I actually looked forward to. I'd already told my roommate I'd be in Dayton for the long weekend. I texted back, "Sure, I'll call around 8. I didn't think anything of it. I went back to work. I should tell you what I do, because it matters for this story. I'm an electrician. Licensed journeyman level, working toward my master's. I started my apprenticeship at 22 after 2 semesters of a business degree that wasn't going anywhere, and I've been doing it for 6 years. I run my own small operation now, just me and 2 part-time guys, Hector and Pete, and we handle residential and light commercial work across central Ohio. I'm not rich. I have a used truck, a storage unit full of tools, and a checking account that looks better in spring than in January. But I'm building something, I know what I'm doing, and I'm good at it. My older brother Tanner is a financial analyst at a consulting firm in Chicago. He went to Ohio State, got recruited straight out of college, wears shirts that cost more than my weekly payroll. He's my mother's reference point for what success looks like. I am, by her accounting, still figuring things out. She has never once said that to my face, but she has a way of asking questions. "So are you keeping busy? Are you getting enough work? Do you have benefits?" That makes it clear she's worried. Like I'm one slow month away from disaster. Like the license I passed on the first try and the clients who refer me to their neighbors and the small business I built from nothing are still somehow provisional. A draft. Not the final version. My dad is warmer about it. He'll ask me what I'm working on and actually listen to the answer. But he follows my mom's lead in most things, and my mom has been following Tanner's lead since he got his first internship at 19. So when she texted about the 4th, I assumed it was logistics. She liked to plan early. She probably already ordered the napkins. I called at 8, sitting on my apartment balcony with a glass of iced tea, watching the parking lot below. My mom picked up on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice had that careful quality, the one she used when she'd rehearsed. "Hey, Mom, what's up with the 4th?" A pause. Longer than it needed to be. "So, Tanner is bringing Victoria to meet everyone. Victoria. His girlfriend of 8 months. I'd heard about her mostly through my mom's updates. She worked in PR. She had a condo in Lincoln Park. She'd gone to Northwestern. My mom had mentioned her the way people mention someone they're already planning a wedding around. "Okay," I said. "That's great. I like meeting people." "Yes, well," another pause. "Victoria comes from her family is they're established, honey. Her father is on the board of 2 hospitals. Her mother chairs a nonprofit." "Okay," I said again, slower this time. "And Tanner is just very nervous about making a good impression. On her parents, too, because they might come. And he talked to us, and we all agreed that it might be better if—" She stopped. "Mom, he doesn't want you there, sweetheart. For the 4th. He's worried that if Victoria's parents ask what you do, it might come across as, I think his exact words were that it might make the family look uneven." I didn't say anything. The parking lot below me was very quiet. Someone was walking a dog. The dog stopped to smell something, and the owner waited. "Uneven," I repeated. "He just means that with her background, and her parents, and Tanner being where he is in his career, he's embarrassed that I'm an electrician." She didn't answer. Mom, that's what you're telling me. He's not embarrassed. He doesn't want me at Dad's 4th of July party because his girlfriend's parents might find out I work with my hands. I know it's not fair, and I told him that. But did Dad agree to this? The pause again, smaller this time, more tired. Your father thinks it might just be easier this year to. I stopped listening, not because I stopped hearing her. I heard every word, but because there was a moment where something settled in my chest. Not anger exactly, something quieter, more like recognition. I knew this feeling. I'd felt it the first time my mom met a client of mine at a family event and pivoted the conversation away before they could talk about my work. I'd felt it when Tanner's Christmas visit somehow turned into a 2-hour recap of his quarterly performance review, while my stories got a polite, "That's great, honey." I'd felt it every time someone asked what I did and my mom answered before I could, softening it somehow, rounding the edges off. I'd always let it go, told myself it didn't matter, told myself she was proud of me in other ways, but this was different. This was my dad's backyard on the 4th of July. A holiday I'd been at every year of my life, and my brother had called my parents and asked them to uninvite me, and they had said yes. "I understand," I said. "Sweetheart, no, really. I get it. Tell Dad happy birthday early. I'll figure out my weekend." I hung up before she could say anything else. I want to be honest about what the next few days looked like, because it would be easy to tell this story as if I was cool and collected the whole time, and I wasn't. I was hurt. Deeply, specifically hurt in a way I hadn't felt since I was a kid. I called my best friend Cassidy, who's known me since middle school and who has an extremely low tolerance for nonsense, and I told her the whole thing. And she said some words about my brother that I won't repeat here, but that I appreciated in the moment. I cried a little. Not a lot. Just the kind of crying that happens when something confirms a fear you've been carrying for a long time and would have preferred to be wrong about. I also kept working. That's what I do. When something is wrong, I work. I had the Columbus restaurant job to finish, and a new client, a woman named Iris who was converting a detached garage into a rental unit, who needed a panel upgrade and new circuits run before her contractor could close the drywall. Deadlines are helpful when you're trying not to think. Iris was in her early 60s, recently retired from the county auditor's office, sharp and funny and completely unintimidated by the project she'd taken on. She'd gotten my name from a neighbor I'd done work for the previous spring. "You come highly recommended," she said the first morning, handing me coffee in a mug that said, "Nevertheless," she persisted, "I don't give that easily." "I appreciate it," I said. "Sandra said you found a problem her previous electrician missed and fixed it without charging extra." "It was on my way out. Wouldn't have felt right to leave it." Iris looked at me the way older women sometimes look at me when I say something like that, like they're filing it away. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. 6 years. Own operation for 2. At your age, that's something. "Trying," I said. She laughed. "No. That's not trying, that's doing." I don't know why that hit me the way it did. I went home that evening and sat with it for a while. That's not trying, that's doing. I'd been raised to treat my own work as a work in progress, always one step shy of legitimate. Iris said it like it was just a fact. No qualifiers. I thought about the 4th a lot that week. I thought about my dad setting up the folding tables in the backyard, the same way he'd done since I was 7. I thought about my brother standing next to Victoria and her parents, everyone in linen and sunglasses, and whether he'd mentioned me at all, or just quietly left a gap where I usually stood. And then I got a call that changed everything, though I didn't know it at the time. It was from a venue coordinator named Sloan at an event center called Hargrove Estate, about 40 minutes outside Columbus, one of those restored farmhouse properties that rented itself out for weddings and corporate retreats and upscale private events. She'd gotten my name through a commercial electrician I'd done a subcontracting job for, and she had a situation. "We have a large private event on the 5th of July, she said. "Dinner for 120, outdoor lighting, a catering tent, live music. Our usual electrical crew had a scheduling conflict, and I need someone who can handle the load specs and be on site for the setup day and the event itself, in case anything goes wrong." "That's a significant job," I said. "I know." And I know it's short notice, but I've been told you're good and you're reliable, and right now that's what I need." I looked at my calendar. The 5th of July was a Sunday, the day after my family's 4th of July cookout, the cookout I was no longer attending. "I can do it," I said. The week before the event, I drove out to Hargrove Estate to do a site assessment. The property was beautiful in a way that made me understand why people spent money on it. Rolling grounds, a restored barn, string lights already threaded through the pergola from a previous event. The main house had been converted into a reception space with catering facilities, and there was a permanent outdoor stage area with a panel that had clearly been added by someone who didn't fully understand what they were doing. Sloane met me at the gate. She was efficient and direct and showed me everything I needed to see without wasting my time, which I respect in a client. "The previous crew ran the stage circuit off the same panel as the catering tent," she said, pointing. "We blew a breaker at the last event and lost power to the warming equipment for 45 minutes. "Yeah, that'll happen." I crouched down and opened the panel. "This is undersized for what you're asking it to do. I'm going to need to add a sub-panel for the stage and run a dedicated circuit for the catering equipment. Separate loads. Can you do that before the 5th? If I start Monday, then let's talk about what that costs." We talked. She didn't flinch at the number, which told me the event mattered enough to do right. I went home and wrote up the contract. I spent the 4th of July alone, which sounds sad and mostly wasn't. Cassidy invited me to her family's thing, but I didn't want to sit in someone else's version of the holiday I was missing. I ordered Thai food and watched a movie and went to bed at 10 because I had to be at Hargrove Estate at 7 the next morning. My mom texted, "Hope you're having a good day. Miss you." I didn't answer right away. I looked at it for a long time. I thought about what I wanted to say, and I kept coming back to something Iris had said toward the end of her project, when I was packing up my tools on the last day. "Can I ask you something personal?" she'd said. "Sure. You ever have people underestimate you because of what you do?" I'd laughed a little. "Yeah. Does it still bother you?" I thought about it honestly. "Less than it used to," I said. "I used to try to explain myself. Now I figure my work explains itself eventually." She'd nodded like I'd said something she'd already known but wanted confirmed. I texted my mom back. "You too, Mom. Talk soon." That was it. I went to sleep. The morning of the 5th was clear and cool, that specific early July air that feels like a gift before the heat settles in. I had Hector and Pete with me, and we worked clean and fast. The sub-panel went in without issues. The stage circuit tested perfect. The catering tent had clean power and proper load balance, and I walked Sloane through the whole setup at noon so she understood what to do if anything tripped. "This is exactly what I needed," she said. "Thank you. You've got my cell if anything comes up tonight." She handed me an envelope with a check and said, "There's also going to be food we always feed the crew. Come back around 6 if you want." I said I'd think about it. I drove home, showered, changed. I went back at 6. The event was in full swing when I arrived, the outdoor dinner, a string quartet playing something I didn't recognize, tables set with what I could only describe as aggressive flower arrangements. People in summer dresses and blazers moved between the tables, drinks in hand. The light I'd helped string across the pergola looked exactly the way it was supposed to. I found the crew entrance, got a plate, stood at the edge of the catering area eating pulled pork and watching the lights hold steady. And then I saw them. My mother, in the blue dress she saved for occasions. My father, slightly sunburned, wearing the same blazer I'd seen him wear to every event since my high school graduation. Tanner, in a linen shirt, standing next to a tall woman with dark hair who I assumed was Victoria. And next to Victoria, 2 older people who carried themselves the way people do when they've been important long enough that it stopped feeling like effort. I stood very still. My mother saw me first. The expression on her face moved through surprise, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear before it settled into a careful smile. She touched my father's arm. He turned. My dad's face was just surprise. Clean surprise, no calculation. Tanner looked at me like I was a problem. I set my plate down and walked toward them, because standing across a courtyard staring at my own family was not something I was going to do. "Hey," I said. "What are you?" Tanner started. "I'm working. I did the electrical for this event. I nodded at the lights overhead. The stage circuit, the catering panel. Sloane brought me in when her usual crew fell through. Victoria looked between me and Tanner with the mildly curious expression of someone watching a TV show she hasn't caught up on. "You're the electrician?" she said, not unkindly, genuinely curious. "I own a small electrical contracting company. We do residential and commercial work." Her mother, the woman I'd assumed was her mother, said, "Really, my husband has been trying to find a reliable electrician for our lake house in Buckeye Lake for 2 years. Everyone we've called either doesn't show up or overcharges for work they don't finish." I looked at her. "That's unfortunately common. Are you taking on new clients? Depends on the scope. But yes." She pulled a card from somewhere and held it out. "I'd love to talk to you this week if you're available." I took the card. I thanked her. I looked at my brother. Tanner's jaw was doing something complicated. My dad cleared his throat. "It looks beautiful out here," he said, looking up at the lights. He said it quietly, to me. "Thanks, Dad." I didn't make a scene. I didn't need to. I excused myself a few minutes later, went back to the crew area, finished my food, and drove home before 9. Sloane texted at 10:30. "Perfect night. Not a single issue. You're going to be my first call from now on." I smiled at my phone and plugged it in for the night. My mom called the next morning. I let it ring once, then picked up. "I want to explain," she said immediately. "About the 4th, and I want to explain." "Okay," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "Then I've been telling myself that I was just trying to keep the peace with Tanner, with the family. I've been telling myself that you were fine, that you understood, that it wasn't that serious." "It was that serious. I know." Her voice was different than I'd expected, not defensive. "I know it was. I knew it the moment I said it to you, and you just said, 'I understand,' and got off the phone. You used to argue with me. You stopped arguing with me a few years ago, and I told myself that meant you were more mature, and I think actually it meant you'd stopped expecting anything different." I sat with that for a moment. "That's probably accurate," I said. "I am proud of you. I haven't shown it the right way. I think I got so focused on worrying about whether you were secure that I forgot to tell you that what you built is real. It's real, and it's yours, and I've been treating it like something you were still working toward when it's something you've already done." It was the most direct thing she'd said to me in years. "Tanner called. His girlfriend's parents are asking about hiring you," she said. And there was something in her voice I recognized after a second as irony. The very particular irony of a mother watching a situation resolve itself in the least convenient way possible for the son who created it. "I know," I said. "Her mother gave me her card last night." My mom laughed. It was a small, tired laugh. "Of course she did." "I'm not doing this to prove a point," I said. "I'm going to call her because it's a job, and it sounds like a reasonable scope, and that's what I do. That's my answer to all of it. That's just what I do." "I know," she said. "I know that now." We talked for another 20 minutes. Not about Tanner, not about Victoria, not about who was right. About my dad's garden, which had gotten out of control over the summer and needed help. About a recipe she'd been trying to get right. About whether I was sleeping enough and eating real food, which is the question she asks when she's trying to say she loves me and doesn't know how else to start. Before she hung up, she said, "I want you to come home for Labor Day, the whole weekend if you can manage it." "I'll check my schedule," I said. "Just you. No event, no production, just come home." "Yeah," I said. "Okay." A few weeks later, I drove out to Buckeye Lake. The property was a lakefront house with a detached boathouse and a main panel that had last been serviced sometime around 2011. Victoria's mother, her name was Margaret, walked me through what they needed. Updated panel, GFCI protection in the bathrooms and kitchen, new circuits for the boathouse, outdoor lighting on the dock. The last guy who came out told us it would take 2 weeks and was going to charge us nearly twice what you quoted, she said. 2 weeks is too long for the scope, I said. I can have it done in 4 days working clean. Margaret looked at me in that direct way she had. Tanner's sister, she said, more to herself than to me. "Yep." She smiled, a small, genuine one. "He didn't mention what you did for a living." "No," I said. "I imagine he didn't." She didn't ask me to elaborate on that, and I didn't offer to. We signed the contract in her kitchen, and she made coffee, and we talked about the scope for another half hour, and it was just work. The clean, specific thing I was good at. I drove home with the signed contract in my passenger seat and the windows down and a country station playing something I only half recognized. The sky over the highway was that pale summer blue that goes on forever. I thought about my brother. I thought about whether I was angry at him, and I checked inside myself, like you check a panel, looking for shorts, for heat, for anything that shouldn't be there. What I found wasn't anger exactly. It was something more like finished. Like I'd been waiting for a verdict on whether my work was real and legitimate and worth respecting, and I'd been waiting for that verdict from people who were never going to give it to me in the form I was looking for. And somewhere between the 4th of July and that drive back from Buckeye Lake, I had stopped waiting. My work is real. I know it when I test a circuit and it holds. I know it when Sloan calls me first. I know it when a client refers her neighbor, and that neighbor refers hers, and 4 years of doing the job right compounds into something no one can take back. I didn't need my brother to see it. I didn't need him to be embarrassed either. That was his to carry. I got home and unloaded my truck and made dinner and answered 3 emails and went to bed at a reasonable hour, like someone who would work in the morning. Which I did, which I always do. I've thought a lot about what actually happened. Not the surface version, not the my brother got embarrassed version people might walk away with, but what was really underneath all of it. My brother didn't uninvite me because he was a bad person. He uninvited me because he had decided, somewhere along the way, that the people he was trying to impress valued a certain kind of credential, a title, a firm name, a salary that came with a benefits package, and a business card that looked right on a restaurant table. He built his whole sense of standing around that picture, and I didn't fit in the frame. That's not evil. That's just a story he'd been telling himself, and one my parents had been quietly agreeing to for years. What I keep coming back to is this. The consequences weren't sudden. They were accumulated every time I let a dismissal slide, every time I answered I'm doing okay, when someone asked about work instead of telling them about the contract I just landed. Every time I made myself smaller so no one had to feel awkward, I was participating in my own erasure. Not dramatically, just slowly, the way a surface corrodes when it's left untreated. You don't notice it until one day someone tells you there's no room for you at your own father's holiday table, and you realize you stopped expecting to matter a long time ago. Iris told me something I've been turning over ever since. She said there's a difference between trying and doing. I'd been so focused on proving I was serious, to my mom, to Tanner, to whatever imaginary panel of judges I'd constructed in my head, that I'd been treating my own work like a case I was still building, like I needed more evidence before I could claim it, like the license and the clients and the years weren't already the verdict. The truth is, the work was always real. The moment I accepted that, not performed it, not announced it, quietly accepted it, everything else became easier to carry. Margaret didn't hand me her card because I argued my case. She handed it to me because she watched me work, and she could tell I knew what I was doing. That's how it actually functions, out in the world, away from family dinners and old assumptions. People who need good work done don't care about your degree. They care whether you show up and whether you finish the job clean. What I want anyone to take from this, if they're somewhere I was 2 years ago, being quietly written out of their own family's story because of what they do or how they do it, is that the answer is never loud or arguing. It's not a speech. It's not a confrontation at a summer party that everyone remembers wrong. The answer is just more work. Better work. Work done with enough integrity that eventually the right people find you, and the people who underestimated you have to reckon with what they missed. Not because you set it up that way, just because that's how it goes when you don't quit. I went home after Buckeye Lake and made dinner and answered my emails and went to bed. There was no moment of triumph I needed to hold on to. The contract was signed. The work was scheduled. That was enough. That was, honestly, everything.